This person you love confessed something unexpected about you. In front of everyone. Don't scroll away yet, because what happened in that room was not a casual comment, and it was not something the person you love had planned to say. In this fictional story, they were surrounded by people, trying to act normal, trying to keep their emotions under control, when someone asked one simple question about you. And that question opened a door they had been keeping closed for far too long. Before they could stop themselves, before they could calculate the safest answer, before fear had time to tell them to stay quiet, they confessed something about you in front of everyone. Something so honest that the entire room went silent for a second. And what they admitted was not what anyone expected. Not even them. So stay with me, because the shocking part is not that they spoke about you. The shocking part is what they finally realized while saying it out loud. Sometimes a person can hide from their own feelings in private for months, but one unexpected moment in front of other people forces the truth to become visible. And once the truth is spoken where everyone can hear it, you cannot easily put it back into silence. It happened during a gathering that felt ordinary at first. Maybe friends. Maybe family. Maybe a small celebration. Nothing about the evening suggested that your name would become the center of attention. The person you love was relaxed enough to stop monitoring every word they said. That mattered. Because when someone is constantly protecting a feeling, they usually stay careful. They change subjects. They use vague language. They make jokes. But this time, their guard was lower. People were talking about relationships, plans, people who had changed their lives. And then someone looked directly at them and asked, "What about that person you keep talking about?" Your person froze. Not dramatically. Just enough that someone nearby noticed. "What person?" they asked, pretending they did not know. The room laughed. Apparently, they had mentioned you more often than they realized. That alone surprised them. Because inside their own mind, they believed they were being careful. Private. Controlled. But feelings have a strange way of escaping through details. Maybe they had mentioned something funny you said. Maybe they had defended you during a conversation when someone misunderstood you. Maybe they had casually brought up something you liked. Maybe they smiled differently when your name appeared on their phone. They thought nobody noticed. People noticed. And now, suddenly, your person was sitting there with several faces watching them, waiting for an answer. One friend said, "Come on. We know who we mean." Another added, "The one who makes you check your phone every 5 minutes." Your person laughed nervously. They wanted to shut it down. They wanted to say you were just a friend. Just someone they knew. Nothing serious. Those were the safe words. And for 1 second, the safe answer almost came out. But then someone asked, "Do you love them?" Silence. That question changed everything. Because your person had spent so long avoiding that exact word. Love. They had used every softer substitute. Care. Connection. Something different. Something meaningful. Something complicated. They had told themselves naming the feeling would make it too real. And now somebody else had named it for them. In front of everyone. They looked down. Their smile disappeared. And the people around them immediately realized this was no longer a joke. One person said softly, "Oh." Because the answer was already beginning to show on their face. Your person tried to speak. Nothing came out at first. Then they said, "I don't know." But something about the way they said it did not sound like uncertainty. It sounded like fear. A close friend leaned back and said, "You know." Your person looked at them. "You're just scared to say it." That sentence landed hard. And suddenly the room felt too small. Your person could feel everyone watching. Normally, that would have made them close down completely. But instead, something unexpected happened. They thought about you. Not the idealized version. Not some fantasy. They remembered the real moments. The moment you noticed something was wrong and did not pressure them to explain. The moment you made them laugh when they had been carrying a difficult day. The moment you disagreed with them but still treated them with respect. The times you were imperfect. The times they were imperfect. The conversations that became awkward and somehow still mattered. The quiet moments. The ordinary moments. And suddenly, love did not feel like some dramatic word anymore. It felt like recognition. They looked up. And what they said next changed the entire energy of the room. "I think they know me better than I want anyone to." Everyone became quiet. That was not the answer anyone expected. They had expected, "Yes, I love them." Or, "No, it's complicated." Instead, your person confessed something deeper. Someone asked, "What does that mean?" Your person laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "It means they notice when I'm lying about being okay." Another silence. "They notice when I pull away." They paused. "And somehow they still don't make me feel like I'm difficult to love." That was when their own words began surprising them. Because they had never said that aloud before. Not to you. Not to anyone. Maybe not even to themselves. Stay with me here, because this is where the confession becomes something much more powerful than a public declaration of love. The person you love began realizing, in real time, what your presence had actually meant to them. They had always focused on attraction. The way they missed you. The way their heart reacted when your name appeared. But sitting there in front of everyone, another truth emerged. You had changed the way they experienced being seen. That frightened them. Because being seen had not always felt safe. Maybe in their past, vulnerability became ammunition. Maybe people had judged the softer parts. Maybe they learned that the easiest way to avoid disappointment was to reveal only what they could control. Then you appeared. And somehow you saw more than they intentionally showed. Yet instead of using that against them, you stayed gentle. Not endlessly patient. Not without boundaries. But gentle. And your person had no language for what that meant until someone forced them to explain you in front of everyone. A friend asked, "Is that why you keep running from it?" Your person looked uncomfortable. "What? You talk about them like they're everything you've wanted, then you act terrified every time it gets serious." That sentence exposed them. They immediately wanted to defend themselves. "It's not that simple." The friend replied, "It usually isn't." Then another person asked, "What are you actually afraid of?" Your person became very still. And this was the moment where they could have shut down. They could have laughed. Changed topics. Walked away. But the atmosphere had already changed. Everyone knew something real was happening. And maybe your person was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of being the only one who did not admit what everyone else could apparently see. So they answered. I'm afraid that if they know how much they matter to me, then I have something real to lose. There it was. The confession beneath the confession. Your person was not afraid of loving you. They were afraid of having something they could lose. That difference mattered. Because for months, maybe their distance had looked like uncertainty. Maybe you thought they were not sure about you. But what if their uncertainty was actually about themselves? Could they handle loving someone deeply? Could they survive if it ended? Could they trust something good without constantly preparing for the moment it changed? The room became silent again. Someone finally said, "But you could lose them anyway." Your person looked up. That sentence hit harder than expected. You can lose someone by never telling them to. And suddenly, your person thought about your recent behavior. How you had become quieter. How you stopped initiating every conversation. How your energy felt different. Maybe they had convinced themselves you were simply busy. But what if something else was happening? What if you were beginning to accept that they would never step forward? That thought made their stomach tighten. One of the people in the room noticed their expression. What? Your person shook their head. Nothing. But everyone knew it was not nothing. Their friend asked, "You think they're pulling away?" Your person did not answer. They did not need to. And then came the sentence that changed the entire conversation. Someone said. Maybe they got tired of being your almost. Almost. That word landed painfully. Almost chosen. Almost loved openly. Almost included. Almost told the truth. Your person thought about how often your connection had existed in that space. Almost. And suddenly, the public confession became uncomfortable in a new way. Because what was the value of saying all of this in front of other people if they still could not say it to you? They looked around the room. People knew. They knew you mattered. They knew your person was scared. They knew something about you had reached a place no one else had reached easily. And you? You might still have no idea. The irony felt terrible. Your person picked up their phone. Someone immediately smiled. Are you going to message them? Your person hesitated. Then said. I don't know what to say. The friend who had been challenging them all evening replied. Try the truth. Simple. Almost annoyingly simple. Your person looked at your conversation. They had done this before. Opened it. Typed. Deleted. Closed the app. Waited. They knew the pattern. And perhaps for the first time, other people had just watched them admit exactly why that pattern existed. Fear. Not confusion. Not lack of feeling. Fear. If you're enjoying this fictional soulmate-style emotional story, subscribe and stay close, because the biggest confession of the night has not happened yet. What the person you love admitted about you in front of everyone was only the beginning. The next thing they say makes one person in that room reveal something about you that your soulmate had no idea anyone else knew. Your person started typing. I don't know how to say this without making it weird. Deleted. Someone watching them laughed. You already deleted it, didn't you? Your person looked annoyed. Yes. Stop editing your feelings. That line made everyone laugh. Even your person smiled. But behind the humor was truth. They were constantly editing themselves, making every feeling smaller before letting anyone see it. They tried again. I was talking about you tonight. Pause. Too strange? Maybe. But true. They left it. Then wrote. And I realized I've said things about you to other people that I should probably have told you first. They stared at that line. Their hearts started racing. Someone sitting nearby asked. What did you say? Your person looked up. Then, almost without thinking, I said they make me feel safe. The room went quiet again. Because that was new. Earlier they had talked about being understood. Seen. Now safe. Someone asked. Safe how? Your person thought about it. Then answered. Like I don't have to be impressive. That surprised even them. They continued. I don't have to have the perfect answer. Another pause. I can just be tired. Or confused. Or not know what I'm doing. Someone smiled. That sounds healthy. Your person looked down. Yeah. And that was exactly why they had been so afraid. Healthy love can be terrifying when chaos is familiar. If you are used to having to earn affection, unconditional warmth feels suspicious. If you are used to relationships where emotional intensity keeps you guessing, peace can feel almost too quiet. If you are used to protecting yourself, safety can make you feel exposed. Because once you feel safe somewhere, losing that safety becomes imaginable. Your person understood this now. And maybe that was the unexpected thing they had confessed about you. You made them feel safe enough to be real. Not perfect. Real. And that terrified them. One of the older people in the room, someone who had stayed quiet during most of the conversation, finally spoke. If that's true, don't punish them for making you feel safe. Your person looked confused. What? Some people finally meet someone who treats them well, and because it feels unfamiliar, they create problems until it feels familiar again. That sentence stopped the room. Your person felt exposed in a completely different way. Because maybe they had been doing exactly that. Every time the connection felt peaceful, they overthought. Every time you became consistent, they searched for reasons not to trust it. Every time they became emotionally comfortable, they created distance. Not consciously. But perhaps part of them needed the relationship to return to familiar territory. Uncertainty. Distance. Longing. Those feelings were uncomfortable, but recognizable. Being loved calmly. That was new. They whispered. I think I do that. Someone asked. Do what? Wait for something to go wrong. There it was. Another confession. Your person continued. Sometimes they'll do nothing wrong and I'll still start thinking maybe they're losing interest, or maybe I'm getting too attached, or maybe I should pull away before something changes. Everyone listened. Then a friend said. Do you realize what that probably looks like to them? Your person closed their eyes for a second. Yes. For the first time, perhaps they truly did. From your side, you might see someone who becomes distant without warning. Someone who tells you nothing is wrong while behaving differently. Someone who offers closeness and then seems to regret it. Your person may have called that self-protection. You may have experienced it as emotional rejection. And suddenly, the public confession was becoming public accountability. This was not people simply encouraging them to chase you. They were making your person examine the way fear shaped the connection. Someone asked, "Have you ever apologized?" Your person hesitated. For what? For making them guess. Silence. They had apologized for individual moments. Maybe. For being distant. For replying late. For being stressed. But had they ever said, "I'm sorry I made you question whether what you felt was real"? No. They had not. That thought stayed with them. They opened your conversation again. The unfinished message was there. "I was talking about you tonight." They continued typing. "I told them you make me feel safe, and I realized I've probably responded to that safety by becoming scared and pulling away." Their finger hovered over send. This was more vulnerable than anything they had sent before. Then someone in the room spoke unexpectedly. "Wait." Your person looked up. The voice belonged to someone who knew you. Not closely. But enough. Someone who had spoken with you recently. The expression on their face was serious now. Your person immediately sensed something. What? The person hesitated. "I don't know if I should say this." Your soulmate's heart started racing. Say what? Everyone looked between them. The person finally said, "I talked to them a few days ago." Your soulmate became completely still. "You talked to them?" "Yeah." "About me?" Another hesitation. "A little." The atmosphere changed instantly. Your soulmate put the phone down. "What did they say?" The person looked uncomfortable. "I don't want to betray something they told me privately." That answer only made your soulmate more nervous. "Then why bring it up?" "Because after hearing everything you just said, I think there's something you need to understand." Your soulmate's chest tightened. "What?" The person took a breath. "They don't think you don't care." That surprised everyone. Your soulmate stared. "What?" "They know you care." This was not what they expected. Your person had assumed your growing distance meant you believed they felt nothing. But apparently, you knew. You had seen through them. Then why had you become quieter? Your soulmate asked exactly that. If they know, why are they pulling away? The person hesitated. Then gave an answer that changed everything. Because knowing someone cares and feeling safe with the way they care are not the same thing. Silence. Your soulmate felt those words hit somewhere deep. They knew you cared about their feelings. You knew they had feelings for you. The problem was not whether love existed. The problem was what love felt like when filtered through fear. Your soulmate asked, "What else did they say?" The person shook their head. "I'm not repeating everything." Then they added, "But they said one thing that stuck with me." "What?" They said, "I don't want someone to realize my value only when they feel me leaving." Your soulmate froze. Completely. The room seemed to disappear. Because that sentence described exactly what was happening tonight. They had always cared. But when had they finally confessed publicly? When they sensed you were becoming quieter. When they feared losing you. When the possibility of you walking away stopped feeling imaginary. Your soulmate's face changed. Someone nearby noticed. "You okay?" They did not answer. Because a difficult question had just entered their mind. Was their courage real? Or was it panic? Would they still feel this urgency if you suddenly became warm again tomorrow? Would they return to comfort? Would the confession become another emotional peak followed by silence? Your soulmate looked down at the message they were about to send you. For the first time, they understood that telling you they loved you was not enough. You already knew they cared. What you did not know was whether they were capable of caring consistently. That was the real issue. The person who had spoken with you said softly, "I think they're protecting themselves." Your soulmate asked. From me? From the pattern. That answer hurt, but it also clarified everything. You were not necessarily running from love. You were running from uncertainty. You were not punishing them. You were choosing not to stay indefinitely inside a connection that made you question where you stood. And maybe, in some strange way, that made your soulmate love you more. Not because you were pulling away. Because they suddenly saw your self-respect clearly. You were not asking to be worshipped. You were asking to be met. Halfway. Honestly. Consistently. Your soulmate picked up the phone again. Deleted the entire message. Everyone watching looked confused. "What are you doing?" They answered. Starting over. This time they typed. "Something happened tonight that made me realize I've been unfair to you." No dramatic confession. No pressure. Accountability first. They continued. "I've spent a long time thinking the biggest question was whether you knew how I felt." Pause. "I'm starting to understand that maybe you knew." Their heart raced. "And the real question is whether the way I've treated you made those feelings feel safe." They stopped. Read it. No hiding. No vague language. They added. "I don't think it did." Then finally. "I'm sorry. You came back because you knew there was one confession left. Not the one everyone heard. Not the part where your soulmate admitted that you make them feel safe, or that they become afraid whenever something between you starts feeling too real. There was something deeper sitting underneath all of that. Something they almost said in front of everyone and stopped themselves from saying because once those words were spoken, there would be no pretending the connection was casual anymore. And now you had asked them directly, "Tell me the thing you were too afraid to say in front of them." Your soulmate stared at the message for a long time. Their fingers rested over the keyboard, but they did not type. Because the truth was bigger than, "I love you." They had already crossed that line inside themselves. The frightening part was not admitting love anymore. The frightening part was admitting what love had made them imagine. Stay with me here, because this is where the entire meaning of that public confession changes. Your soulmate had not only been imagining another date with you. Not another conversation. Not another temporary chapter. Somewhere quietly, without even deciding to, they had begun placing you inside their future. And that terrified them. They had imagined waking up and seeing your name as part of their everyday life. They had imagined ordinary evenings with you. Grocery stores. Long drives. Small disagreements. Holidays. Sitting beside you when neither person had anything important to say. They had imagined introducing you differently one day, not as someone they were talking to, not as someone complicated, but as the person they had chosen. They had even imagined what it might feel like to build a home around the peace they felt with you. That was the confession they could not say in front of everyone. Because once you admit you can imagine a future with someone, you reveal how much losing them could hurt. Your soulmate finally started typing. I think I'm afraid because I don't only think about what we are now. They stopped. Read it. Then continued. I think about what we could become. Their heartbeat sped up immediately. It was still vague enough to hide behind. They knew that. And tonight was supposed to be about stopping that pattern. So they added. I've imagined a real life with you. Their hands went still. There it was. No poetry. No safe word. Real life. They sent it. Your typing indicator appeared immediately, then disappeared. Your soulmate felt panic rise. Maybe it was too much. Maybe you were nowhere near that emotional place. Maybe hearing something so serious after months of inconsistency would feel confusing instead of romantic. They almost sent another message explaining they were not trying to pressure you. Then they remembered what they had learned already. Give truth room to breathe. So they waited. Finally, your response came. What does real life mean? Your soulmate stared at the question. You were not rejecting it. You were asking them to define it. That made them even more nervous. They typed. Not some perfect fantasy. Pause. I mean ordinary life. Another line. You being there when things aren't exciting. They thought about it. Me being there when you're tired or annoyed or scared. Another pause. I've imagined what it would feel like if we stopped treating this like something that might disappear at any second. That sentence surprised them. Because maybe that was the deepest longing underneath everything. Stability. Not intensity. Not constant emotional highs. The ability to stop preparing for an ending. Your reply took time. Then. You've thought about that? They smiled sadly at the phone. More than I've admitted. You answered. Then why did you act like you barely knew what you wanted? There it was again. The contradiction. The very thing everyone in that room had confronted them about. Inside, your soulmate had been imagining a future. Outside, they had been offering uncertainty. And the person who paid the price for that contradiction was you. They replied. Because wanting something that much made me feel like I was losing control. You asked. Control of what? Their fingers paused. That question went deeper than expected. What exactly had they been trying to control? The outcome? Their feelings? Your opinion? The possibility of getting hurt? Maybe all of it. They answered. Control of how much you could affect me. Silence. Then another message from them. I think I believed if I never fully admitted how much I wanted this, then losing it wouldn't destroy me. Your response came slowly. Did that work? Your soulmate actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because the answer was painfully obvious. No. Then. It just made me terrified anyway and made you confused too. For the first time in the conversation, you sent a small laughing response. Not mocking. Warm. The tension softened slightly. But there was still something unresolved. You wrote. I need to ask you something. Your soulmate's body tensed again. Ask. Do you want a future with me because you actually know me, or because I make you feel safe? That question changed everything. Because it forced them to separate two things that can easily become confused. Loving someone. And loving how someone makes you feel. Your soulmate did not answer quickly. That was important. They thought about who you really were. Not just how you treated them. Your flaws. Your moods. The things you could be stubborn about. The way you sometimes withdrew too. The ways your opinions challenged theirs. The moments you were impatient. The differences between you. If they only loved the comfort you provided, then perhaps the future they imagined was simply emotional security wearing your face. But that was not what they felt. They typed. I think the safety was what made me notice something. Pause. But it's not the only thing I love. You replied. What else? Your soulmate took another breath. I love that you don't automatically agree with me. They smiled while typing. I hate it sometimes. You replied almost immediately. I know. They continued. I love that you care deeply but you still have boundaries. Another line. I love that you notice people who are being left out. Another. I love the way you get excited about small things. They paused. I love that sometimes you're difficult. Your response. Excuse me? They laughed again. This was the first moment all night that felt almost normal. They quickly wrote. I mean you don't just make everything easy for me. Then. You make me explain myself. Another line. You challenge me when I'm hiding behind something. They stopped. And I think I need that more than I realized. This time your answer was quieter. Okay. Your soulmate stared. They could not tell if okay meant touched, overwhelmed, or uncertain. So instead of asking for reassurance, they allowed you to continue when you were ready. After a minute, you wrote. That sounds more real. And that sentence meant more than they expected. Because perhaps you had been afraid their confession was simply panic triggered by your distance. Maybe the fact that they could describe you beyond the role you played in soothing their fears made the feeling more credible. But then you asked another question. If you've imagined all this, what exactly were you imagining? Your soulmate froze again. This was the thing they had been afraid to tell everyone. Specificity. They could say, future, safely. Details made it real. They typed. Do you actually want to know? You replied. Yes. They took a breath. I imagine taking a trip with you. Pause. Not some perfect vacation. I imagined us getting irritated because we got lost. You laughed. They continued. I imagined you making fun of me because I packed something stupid. Another message. I imagined us having an argument and then having to sit down and actually fix it instead of disappearing. That one made the mood shift. Because even their fantasy contained repair. Maybe that was how deeply your connection had changed their understanding of love. They were not imagining perfection. They were imagining staying present through imperfection. They continued. I imagined meeting your people properly. Another pause. You meeting mine. Their hearts started beating faster. And I've imagined coming home to you. There it was. The sentence they almost confessed in front of everyone. Coming home to you. Your soulmate stared at the message before sending. It felt dangerously intimate. But they pressed send. Your response did not come. For a long time. The silence stretched enough that fear began returning. Then you finally wrote. That one scares me. Your soulmate swallowed. Why? You replied. Because I've imagined it too. Everything inside them stopped. You had imagined it too. Not just attraction. Not just the connection as it existed now. A future. Their hands started shaking slightly. They almost typed 10 messages at once. Instead, they asked. Really? You answered. Yes. Then immediately. But that doesn't erase what happened between us. There it was. Reality returning. And strangely, your soulmate respected it. Two people could imagine a future and still have work to do in the present. Love did not delete history. Confession did not automatically rebuild trust. They answered. I know. You replied. Do you? Your soulmate stared at that question. Then typed. I think I'm starting to. They continued. If I want the future I've imagined, I have to become someone who can handle the present without running. Your response. Yes. That simple confirmation hit deeply. Because now the conversation had a direction. Not, promise me forever. Not, prove you love me. Something more practical. Stop running. Show up. Let actions become compatible with the future you claim to want. Your soulmate asked. Can I ask what you imagined? You took longer this time. Then answered. I imagined peace. That surprised them. Not marriage. Not travel. Peace. You continued. I imagined being with someone where I didn't have to keep checking if everything was okay. Another line. Someone who would tell me if something changed. Another. I imagined not having to earn emotional safety every week. Your soulmate's chest tightened. Because every sentence described something their behavior had failed to provide. You were not asking for intensity. You were asking for continuity. They typed. I'm sorry I gave you the opposite of that sometimes. You replied. Sometimes, yes. Not cruel. Accurate. Then. But I also saw the version of you underneath it. Your soulmate stared. What version? The one who wanted to stay. That sentence broke something open. Because perhaps that was exactly what you had been seeing all along. Behind the distance, you saw longing. Behind the hesitation, fear. Behind the silence, someone who wanted connection but did not know how to tolerate the vulnerability it required. But seeing potential does not mean living forever with behavior that hurts. You continued. I just stopped believing it was my job to pull that version out of you. Your soulmate closed their eyes. That was the truth. You could not do their emotional work for them. You could create safety. You could offer honesty. You could communicate your needs. But eventually they had to choose whether to step forward themselves. They replied, "You're right." Then. And I'm glad you stopped. That surprised you. Why? Because I think if you kept doing it for me, I might have kept letting you. Silence. That was one of the most honest admissions of the night. Sometimes people do not change because someone else keeps compensating for their avoidance. Your patience had once made it possible for your soulmate to delay. Your boundaries were now making delay uncomfortable. That discomfort might be necessary. If you are enjoying this emotional fictional story, subscribe and stay close, because what happens next takes the public confession into completely unexpected territory. Someone from that gathering sends your soulmate a private message afterward, and what they say forces them to question whether their fear of losing you has already been visible for much longer than they realized. The conversation between you eventually slowed. Both of you were exhausted. So much had been said. Your soulmate did not want to overfill the moment. They said, "I think I should let you sleep." You replied, "Probably." Then, after a pause, "I'm glad you told me." Your soulmate stared at that. Which part? All of it. Their chest warmed. Then you added, "But tomorrow matters more." There it was again. Tomorrow. The day after vulnerability. The place where their old pattern usually returned. They typed, "I know." You replied, "Good night." They said it back. And then they put their phone down. For a few minutes, they simply sat there. The gathering was mostly over now. People had gone home or moved into quieter conversations. Your soulmate thought about the strange sequence of events. They had walked into that room planning to say nothing about you. Instead, they publicly admitted that you knew them in a way few people did. Admitted they felt safe with you. Admitted fear made them run. Then privately, they admitted something even bigger. They imagined coming home to you. And you had admitted you imagined peace with them too. There was hope. But your final sentence remained clear. Tomorrow matters more. Then the phone vibrated. Your soulmate assumed it might be you again. It was not. It was a message from the person who had spoken with you a few days earlier. The same person who told everyone that you did not want someone to recognize your value only when they felt you leaving. Your soulmate opened it. The message said, "I didn't say everything earlier." Their heart immediately tightened. They replied, "What do you mean?" The answer came. There was another thing they said about you. Your soulmate stared at the screen. What? The person took a long time to respond. Finally. They said they think you love them. Your soulmate frowned. That was not shocking anymore. They typed. They told you that? Yes. Then what's the problem? The response came. They said knowing that is what makes this harder. Your soulmate became still. How? Another pause. Then. Because they said, if they didn't love me, walking away would be easier. The hard part is knowing they probably do and still wondering whether love is enough to make them stop hurting me. Your soulmate felt their stomach drop. They reread the sentence. Once. Twice. Again. There it was. The entire situation reduced to its most painful truth. You believed they loved you. And that still had not been enough to make you feel secure. That distinction changed everything. Your soulmate had been focused on proving the feeling. Maybe they had been solving the wrong problem. The question was not whether they loved you. The question was what their love became when it passed through fear. Did it become warmth? Or confusion? Presence? Or withdrawal? Communication? Or guessing? The person messaging them added. I'm telling you because after tonight, you seem like you finally understand there's a difference. Your soulmate did not answer immediately. Then typed. I do. They looked at your conversation again. Your final message. Tomorrow matters more. Suddenly, tomorrow felt like the beginning of an entirely different challenge. There would be no dramatic audience. No friends questioning them. No emotional adrenaline from confessing everything. Just ordinary life. Would they message you? Would they remain warm? Would they panic and feel embarrassed about everything they admitted? Would they suddenly need space and expect you to understand? This was where change would either begin or collapse. The next morning, your soulmate woke up with a familiar feeling. Exposure. The vulnerability hangover. Their first instinct was exactly what you feared. Pull away. Last night had been too much. They had said too much. You knew too much now. They looked at your conversation and felt the urge to wait. Maybe give it a day. Let everything cool down. Old pattern. There it was. Clear as daylight. They almost laughed at how predictable it felt now that they could see it. Fear whispered. Do not message. You already said enough. Wait for them to reach out. If they care, they will. Your soulmate stared at those thoughts. And then they did something different. Something small. Something that would have seemed insignificant to anyone else. They typed. Good morning. Pause. I woke up feeling exposed after everything I said last night. Another pause. And my first instinct was to go quiet, so I'm telling you instead. They sent it. No editing. No performance. Truth. Your response came later. Thank you. Then. That is exactly what I meant. Your soulmate smiled. Nothing dramatic happened. No music. No life-changing confession. Just one old pattern interrupted. And maybe that was more important than everything said in front of everyone. Because change rarely looks cinematic. Often, it looks like sending the message you usually avoid. Your soulmate continued showing up throughout the day. Not excessively. Not anxiously. Just normally. They asked about something you had mentioned. They remembered a detail. When work became stressful and they felt themselves becoming distant, they told you instead of vanishing. You noticed. Again. You did not immediately trust everything. But you noticed. Several days passed. And something strange happened. The connection became quieter. But safer. Less dramatic. Less guessing. Your soulmate started understanding what you meant by peace. There was still attraction. Still longing. Still fear. But now fear could be spoken instead of acted out. One evening you said, "This feels different." They replied, "Good different?" You answered, "Yes." Then, "But I'm waiting to see if it lasts." Your soulmate did not become defensive. I would too. That answer mattered. They understood that trust takes longer to rebuild than excitement takes to create. And for the first time, they were willing to let consistency be boring. No constant need for reassurance. No dramatic tests. Just showing up. But then, exactly when things began feeling